I do bop bop. I do bop bop. Can you chat on here without the StreamYard type shit? What's all this stuff? Don't look like it, huh? Wonder what my chat's even called or my live. I don't know. What up, though? Oh shit, 3 people in here. I don't even know how this works. I usually go on StreamYard. What's up, 3 people? Hope you're having a good 4th of July. It's boring in the Detroit area. Just another Thursday. I should be up north, but I'm not. Where's the chat thing at? I've never gone live without StreamYard. Benny and the Jets. What was that? What up, though? How do you see the chat without StreamYard? 2 people. What's up? Frank Nitty. 2 T's. Or what do they say? I got my dragon's milk. Let's party. Oh, man. What's up, folks? I was just in the city. I didn't see any of your Southwest street celebrities. I don't ever see them. I must not know the hot spots like secular. I haven't gone live in years. But this is lame. I can't attract an audience. I'm not cool. Back when I used to go live a few years ago, I used to get like 30, 40 people in the room. But that's when it was geared towards chosen one community gossip. We don't do that anymore. Ever since I moved out of that, my channel blew up. So I don't know what's going on in that community anymore. But those that I knew and were always good to me, I hope you all are still good. I'm out of the loop. I try to scan through and see what's going on, but I don't recognize any of the channels these days. There's all kinds of new ones out there using other people's content to get views, which I'm not a fan of. You gotta be creative. Come up with your own content. Quit messaging me, people. Dang. So, who's the top dog of the Chosen One community these days? Someone fill me in on the loop. Where's the chat law? How come I can't see none of the chats? Top messages. Where are they at? I don't see messages anywhere. Am I doing something wrong? Welcome to live chat. Remember. Yeah, dog, I know. Oh, where's the chat? Oh, well. I don't know how to see the chat. What's this? We ain't sharing nothing. Why is no one not saying anything? Is that why there's no chat coming up? Or am I doing something wrong? Oh, there we go. What up, Marker? How you been, buddy? Look, I got the decap on for you, Marker. Still. What's up, Alexander? Happy 4th, Alexander. Good to see you, Marker. I don't go live ever, but the first time I do, you pop in. You're a real one. You've always been a supporter. I appreciate you, man. Our Tigers fell apart. They hung on, remained 500 for a few months. Now they're just dropping down. 8 games out of 500. Another wasted year. Oh well. I don't think they'll ever be good. Happy 4th right back at you, my friend. Cleveland is running away with the division like wildfire. They're like 20 games over 500. I started off watching every Tiger game in April through May, and then they weren't hitting. It was boring baseball. I just threw in the towel. Thank God for the Lions because sports in the Detroit area are in a bad place. The Pistons are the worst. Red Wings had a good year for a change. Tigers, terrible. The Lions should make another deep run. They got a hard schedule, but they got better than last year, so it's Super Bowl or bust for the Lions. Michigan lost everybody. They got a super hard schedule. I see them going 12-2, making the playoffs, losing in the second round probably. We'll see how they do against Texas in week 2. That'll let us know if they're for real or not. They got some studs back, but when you lose your whole defense but 2 players and the entire offensive line and your starting quarterback, it's going to be hard to duplicate last season. But I mean, a natty, we can pride off that for the next 10 years. I can't believe it's already July. before we know it, it's already gonna be freaking fall and winter again. Something happened with the universe. Time is going faster these days. I'm telling you. From 2016 to 2024, the last 8 years has gone by like way fast. If I compare that to other 8 year spans of my life, like say first grade to eighth grade, that seemed like it took forever. But 2016 to 2024 was like a blink of the eye. I think they did something in the universe to speed up time because it's literally you blink and it's freaking already the end of the week, and then it's next week, then it's next week. Like I gauge it by doctor's appointments. I go once a month and it seems like I just went yesterday and my doctor's appointment's coming up again. It's crazy how fast time's moving. But I try to just live in the moment because if you start getting caught up in all that stuff, you'll just drive yourself crazy. But it definitely seems a little unordinary. That away marker. Enjoy those days off, buddy. You deserve them. That's a nice little break for you, man. I'm happy for you. Hopefully, those days go by slow for you. That was the best part about today landing on a Thursday. Most jobs gave people 4 and 5 day weekends. Yes, Alexander, man. I mean, shoot, how long's it been now? The last like 12 years or so, they've been bottom of the league. They keep rebuilding and nothing's happening. I've lost hope. I mean, by now, half the league's already rebuilt and made runs, but not the Pistons. Look at the Mavericks. They were down in the dumps the last 5, 6 years. They rebuilt and made it to the finals. But ever since Chauncey, Ben, Tayshaun, and Hamilton, ever since those guys left, the Pistons haven't did squat. And I think like 2008 was the last year we had some of those guys on the roster. Once they traded Chauncey for Iverson, that was like the end of it. They've been bad ever since. And then since the NBA's rigged, somehow the Pistons are the worst team every year, have the most lottery balls, and never get the first 3 picks. They always end up with the fifth pick somehow. Tell me how that's possible. When you got the best chance of landing the number one pick, yet you end up with the fifth pick every time. Something ain't right. They just know that this market's dead and they ain't trying to let the top players come here because the year the Spurs when they got that one guy like 2 years ago, that real tall guy, the Pistons had way more lottery balls in there for a chance for the number one pick. And of course, they don't get it. Come on now. When any other team finishes dead last, they always get the number one pick, but the Pistons, nope. The Red Wings had a great year, and now half the team didn't resign or re-sign, and they all are on different teams. So it looked like things were turning around. Now they got to rebuild all over again. So I guess we'll put our eggs in the Lions basket and see what happens. The only thing I worry about now is they're the top dogs, so they're not. Everyone's gunning for them. Like last couple years, they were surprising people, but now when you're one of the top teams in the league, you ain't surprising anyone. Everyone's gonna be ready for them. I just hope it wasn't a fluke last year, but I don't think it could have been. There's no way. They got too many talented players, and they only got better with the draft and through free agency. The Packers got good too, and Love's going to be a lot better this year, but I think the Lions will win the division. The Lions and Green Bay will battle for the division for sure. My Super Bowl prediction is Detroit versus Cincinnati in the Super Bowl. That's my homer pick. And my national championship in college is going to be, let's see, LSU versus Ole Miss. Just throw a random one out there. Ohio State's the favorites because they bought their team. They literally got every 5-star recruit known to man to come to their team. But that's how it's been the past 10, 12 years. Michigan gets the 3 stars and 4 stars and develops their players. Oh, you took PTO for tomorrow? Yeah, always the old English D, my friend. Lions have been coming up slowly. I remember watching them on Thanksgiving a couple years ago. They were gritty as hell, just didn't win. That's been the Lions' story for years, Alexander. They just never could get the breaks to go their way. It was like a curse. Like, no matter what, something always went the wrong way at the end to where the Lions were on the wrong side of it. But last year, things finally started going their way, and you seen what happened. They started freaking winning games they normally would lose. So let's hope they got rid of that curse finally. I'm excited to see Gibbs in his second season. Jamo should be healthy and have a huge year this year. You know St. Brown's going to go off as always. We finally got defensive backs that aren't going to get burned every play. Cam Sutton literally was a free touchdown to the opposing teams whenever they wanted to throw a bomb. He was awful. Literally, he was number one, but every touchdown you watched, you would see Cam Sutton 10, 15 yards away from the receiver who's scoring. That's how bad he was. We drafted that corner out of Alabama who's going to be real good, and then we picked some up from free agency. So our defensive back should be a lot better. Our D line is going to be the strength. They got everyone coming back, plus a free agent. They had the second best yards against last year and the second most quarterback sacks and hurries. So we're good there. Our linebackers are good. It was just our defensive backs were terrible. If we didn't have an offense, we would have got killed last year, but we won all our games in shootouts because our offense could score at will, but then the other teams could also score at will because we had no defense. Hopefully, Goff doesn't take a step back now that he got his contract. A lot of times when quarterbacks get that giant contract they're waiting for, they fall off and aren't as good because now they aren't playing for a contract. So let's hope that don't happen. Yeah, you know about Sutton. He's got to be the worst DB in NFL history. I don't know how the freaking Eagles gave him a contract. The dude has to run a 5 flat 40. He gets burned every play and he falls for the freaking what do I try to think of, the wide receiver, like the fake step, like they're gonna do a curl or an in route. He bites on that every time, and then the receiver just goes deep, and Sutton's nowhere to be found. Worst player I've ever seen in my life. And all the media polls have Gibbs and Montgomery as the best running back duo in the league. St. Brown's a top 5 receiver in the league. Our tight end's a beast. Last year, our tight end freaking went crazy. I can't think of his name right now. He was a rookie, though, but he had a huge year. He should have been rookie of the year. He got shafted. I'm glad that they kept Donovan Peoples Jones. He should get some playing time now that Reynolds is gone. The guy that dropped the 2 passes against the 49ers in the championship game that would have sealed the win for us. I'm glad they didn't re sign him. So now Peoples Jones should be the 3 man and get a lot more playing time because the year before Detroit traded for him from Cleveland, he was putting up some numbers in Cleveland. Plus, he's a hometown kid from Detroit Caz Tech. Yeah, he's got to be the worst DB in the NFL. And then the guy we got from the Eagles that was supposed to be the man turned out to be nothing but a loudmouth punk. So I'm glad we got rid of him. And the Eagles signed him again, too. Gardner, CJ Gardner, number 2. He was a punk. I'm excited, though. It'll be here before we know it. I mean, shoot, college football starts in late July, early August. So, I mean, that's just a couple weeks away. Now that they expanded the playoff, it's not as nerve wracking. Your team can lose a game or two and you'll still get in. Donovan Edwards should go off. He should have a Heisman like year. He's a stud. But other than him, our offense is all young. Our tight end, what is his name, Loveland or whatever, he'll be good. But quarterback, we'll have to see how Alex Orji is, or Orji, however you pronounce it. He's definitely athletic, so he'll be able to run and scramble. Hopefully, he's got a good arm and he's accurate. But it's only for this year. Then we got Jaden Davis, who was a high 4-star, should have been a 5-star. And then they just signed the class of 2025, that kid with the last name Brady. He's a 5-star. He's like 6'5", white guy, number 2 quarterback in the country for class of 2025. I hope the kid from Belleville is a bust. He was talking trash about Michigan. He said the reason he didn't go to Michigan is because they don't develop quarterbacks or have quarterbacks in the NFL, which, what the hell is he talking about? Tom Brady's the best quarterback of all time. He's from Michigan. Michigan just had a quarterback drafted in the first round with JJ. They freaking had Chad Henne had a good career. Brian Greasy. They've had a lot of quarterbacks. Elvis Gerbach. Um, Look at LSU. Other than the quarterback they just had, who was a transfer, who have they had in the NFL? They had Burrows. Other than that, I mean, Jamarcus Russell's one of the biggest jokes of all time. So, whatever. He'll regret going to LSU. But I've watched him play live a ton of times because Belleville's close to where I live. So I go and watch all the games when it's playoff time, when they play good teams. He is a freak of nature for sure. He's like 6'4", 205, got a cannon, and plus he's fast and can scramble. Definitely, he reminds me of Devin Gardner when Devin Gardner was in high school, just a little better. the two people. Oh, we're back to 5. What else can we talk about? We just talked about sports for 30 minutes. We can talk about Detroit, the fake facade of Detroit coming back. Detroit's not on the comeback at all. I get so sick and tired of hearing that. Downtown and immediate surrounding neighborhoods are coming back, which those areas represent tourists and people from the suburbs. The real neighborhoods where I video for my YouTube channel, those neighborhoods aren't coming back, and that's why I dedicate most of my videos to those areas, because I want to show the world the truth that the city ignores those areas, neglects them. They give no funding to those neighborhoods, yet they're trying to convince the world Detroit's on the comeback. Well, just watch a few of my East Side videos and you'll see Detroit's not coming back. Downtown and the neighborhoods are two different things. The real residents of Detroit live in the neighborhoods. They deserve the funding and they deserve all the help. Instead, another $1 million hotels being built, a new national restaurants being put up, and the mayor and city turns a blind eye to the war zone neighborhoods that just continue to diminish, full of poverty, crime. They come through, tear down a couple houses, and leave. And then those lots that they tear down do nothing but collect trash, grow grass, weeds, and even worse, they filled all the holes in with contaminated dirt trying to save money, and they got caught for the second time in less than a year. Just a year ago, the feds came in and fined the city of Detroit like $5 million for not disposing asbestos and using contaminated dirt. And then just a couple weeks ago, they got caught again using contaminated dirt to fill in the holes where they tear down houses. So, they're taking tax money and making contracts saying they're purchasing new dirt, and instead they're putting that money in their pocket using contaminated dirt. So I'm glad they got caught. I hope they get fined again. They're so corrupt. And then you would think the city would love locals purchasing the land bank houses, but in reality, they do all they can to make it impossible for locals to buy the houses and fix them up, because they want land bought in large parcels instead of house by house. They want big corporations to come in and buy mass quantities of land all at one time. So that's why they're not doing anything to help citizens purchase the abandoned homes and fix them up. They'd rather have BlackRock and Vanguard buy up all the vacant land, and who knows what they're going to do with it. China owns a lot of land in Detroit. When a resident tries to buy a house and fix it up, they'll sell it to them, and then they'll come on the site and tell them, before you can start doing any kind of improvement on this house, you must pay us $20,000 in back taxes. But they don't tell them that at the auction. They let them buy the house. So then most people end up just walking away and taking the loss because they don't got the 20 grand to pay in back taxes. That's why you're not seeing a lot of the abandoned houses in Detroit being fixed up. And don't let anyone tell you differently. That's really what's going on. I'm in the center of it. I see it every day. I go to the auctions. Big time crooks, man. Where was your old work at, Marker? I'm all over the city, so I don't remember where I'm at in a lot of videos. I try to cover everywhere. Alexander, I would say um the northeast part of the city, which is the 48205, the red zone, like Chalmers and 7 Mile area, is real bad. And then the 48204 part of the west side, which is like Livernois from Joy Road to Finkel, maybe. Basically, between Livernois and Dexter, from say Tireman to the first busy road after 96, which I'm not sure if it's West Chicago or one of those, but that area on the west side is real bad. In 2013, the 48204 was the worst zip code in the entire country. But yeah, basically that area is full of those giant 2 and 3 story brick homes that are 2 and 3 family homes, but most of them are abandoned, but they don't tear those ones down as much because they're so big it would cost a lot. So driving through that area, if you ever heard of Collingwood, if you take Livernois to Collingwood and head east towards Dexter, you would be in one of the roughest areas in the city by far. And then, of course, the Dexter Linwood area is real bad between Joy and 96. And then it used to be Brightmoor was real bad, but nowadays there ain't really much there. All the houses are torn down for the most part. It still gets bad on Joy Road from like Greenfield to Evergreen between Joy and Plymouth, that's a rough area on the west side. But those neighborhoods are different houses. Those are more like starter homes that you see in suburbs, like this, like smaller homes. They're not those big, giant brick Detroit homes. But if I had to pick two, it would definitely be 48205 on the east side and 48204 on the west side if you want to Google those zip codes. I mean, the east side is practically abandoned. If you go, like, say you start at Jefferson and just take Van Dyke all the way to 8 Mile, the side roads, the the whole way basically only have two or three houses on each block. It's wild how vacant it is over there. It's dead. But those areas really aren't the most dangerous, although they look the worst. They look like a war zone, but the areas that look the worst aren't the most dangerous because there's not as much people there, you know. There's more crime in areas where there's more people, and there's more people in areas that don't look as bad. But the same with Chalmers. You can go from 94 in Chalmers all the way to 8 Mile and just turn down random side streets the whole way. And it's just empty fields with a couple abandoned houses sitting on each block. It's sad how much vacant land's on the east side now. There's enough vacant land on the east side to fit the entire city of San Francisco. Then you got like the city airport area between Van Dyke and French Road. That's a ghost town. It's nothing but overgrown growth of nature with some old creepy houses mixed in. Plus, you got the south side of 94. It's got a lot of bad areas. And then, like, Chaldean Town is real bad. You can't forget about Highland Park, which isn't Detroit, but Highland Park, if it was Detroit, would probably be the worst neighborhood in Detroit by far. But the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, the east side was way worse. But now that all the houses are bulldozed, it's pretty quiet over there, actually. Yeah, but those houses that are like 10,000 and cheaper, you just got to be careful about the back taxes. Make sure before you put any money down or make an offer on any house that you get the exact amount of back taxes, because they won't let you do any kind of improvement on the house until the back taxes are paid in full. It's ridiculous. That's why I know they don't really want the area to be fixed up, because if they wanted it to be fixed up, they wouldn't force people to pay the back taxes. But by doing that, it's preventing people from fixing up all the houses that are still standing, which is pathetic. Baby, baby. They got Southwest looking real good, but that's only because of the bridge. If they never were gonna build that bridge, they wouldn't have cleaned up Southwest like they did. But knowing that's gonna be the first impression of the city people get when they come across the bridge, that's the reason they cleaned it up. I mean, they gave residents vouchers for new windows, new siding, new roofs. They put in new sidewalks on every block. They did a lot in that area. That's what bothers me, because if they're able to clean up and make that big of a difference in a neighborhood that fast, that only proves they're capable of doing that in all the neighborhoods in the city that are in rough shape. But obviously, they don't do it because they have no interest, because they're not gonna get anything back from doing it. They're not gonna make any money fixing up those neighborhoods. So they pretend they don't exist. But they cleaned up Delray, Southwest, all the way from Woodmere across past Clark Park. I mean, it looks like a whole different area compared to the 90s and early 2000s. Houses in that area that used to be 30 and 40 grand are now going for 180 to 250 grand. It's wild. The gentrified Corktown is spreading fast across Southwest. Before you know it, the entire Southwest area is going to be gentrified. They started around the Clark Park area, like by West Grand Boulevard and Junction and those areas, like off of Verner down to Fort. And now they're starting to make their way west towards Livernois, and then they'll make their way to Springwells into the cemetery, and before you know it, Southwest Detroit will be like Palmer Woods or Sherwood Forest, Boston Edison. It'll be a high end neighborhood with houses 200 grand and higher, which I feel bad for the residents who've lived there their whole lives and stuck through everything when it was a rough area full of poverty. Now those people are getting pushed out of the neighborhood because they can't afford it anymore. There's other ways to go about it. Like, I think if you're gonna gentrify areas, you should first allow locals to build businesses and own things like restaurants and stores before you allow companies from other cities and other places that have no ties to the area to move in and set up shop. But it's all about money, so they're gonna allow those name brand places to move in immediately because it's gonna draw the prices to increase, and that's all the city cares about. They don't care about the residents. I mean, if you go 3 miles or 4 miles, let's say north from Verner towards Michigan Avenue and to the number streets. So, say from Livernois to the Boulevard, from Michigan Avenue to Warren, those neighborhoods are a disaster. But it's still District 6. It's still got the same zip code as Southwest Detroit. But seeing that it's further away from the bridge and the central business district, they don't care. And then if you go even further, like Warren and McGraw area to Tireman, it's real bad over there. I mean, I don't know what neighborhood that's really considered, but it's the 48210 zip code, which is the other Southwest zip code. But West Warren and McGraw to Tireman is nothing but abandoned houses, vacant lots. It's bad over there. And another example, as soon as you cross the freeway 94, because Southwest is two sections, 48209 is like the Springwells Verner area, and then 48210 is the other side of 94, which is both Southwest Detroit. Well, if you look at my videos, I made one recently of the differences between 48209 and 48210. It's ridiculous how different the areas are. They're only divided by 94 or Michigan Avenue, but the neighborhoods look nothing alike. The north side of 94, like the McGraw area, from McGraw to Warren, in between Wyoming and Livernois, that area is in bad shape. I mean, there's bandos everywhere, houses falling apart, vacant lots. It just looks bad. And then you drive a mile south towards Verner, and every house is fenced in, got new siding or brick, all new windows, new roofs. All the sidewalks are brand new. All the streets are painted. All the street lights are fixed and brand new. So obviously something's going on there, because that's all District 6, but how can one area be light and day different from the other area within a mile? It's insane. And that goes back to, they only care about the area people are going to see when they get off the Gordie Howe Bridge. They know that no tourist or suburbanite's gonna venture across 94 into the McGraw side of Southwest, so they put no money into that area, and it shows. I mean, they don't hide how crooked they are. There's just not enough people speaking up. Everyone's all caught up in talking about Detroit's major comeback, which is basically everyone from the suburbs. I get it in my comments constantly. People complaining about me showing the areas that I show instead of showing the places in Detroit that are improving and looking better. But like I said earlier, the places that are improving and looking better are not benefiting the residents of Detroit. It only benefits the city, the government, and tourists and suburbanites. It's a shame. I don't think you'll ever see Detroit come back. They'll continue ignoring the real neighborhoods, pretending that things are changing. I mean, you got Detroit, the number one river walk in the country. You got Detroit downtown nightlife, top 5 in the country. That's all you hear about. But why don't you hear about the neighborhoods where 500,000 people struggle to survive every day? You don't hear about that. So I'm going to keep making my videos showing the real Detroit neighborhoods, regardless of all the comments of people complaining. hoping I make a difference, which I doubt I am, but at least people will see that it's a total scam and Detroit is not coming back. Downtown, it's nice to have a downtown area that's booming, but when you're not putting any of that money into the rest of your city, then what's it matter? I mean, look at all the schools that had to close down. Look at how poor the education system in Detroit is. It's the worst in the country. They could be putting money into that, trying to improve that, but they'd rather see another hotel built on the river, or they'd rather see another five-star steakhouse built on Woodward, pleasing everyone but real Detroiters. I mean, I got a house in the Dexter area just south of Joy Road. There's 3 occupied houses out of 14 on the block. The 3 houses are me and the 2 neighbors I get along with. We cut the grass on all the vacant lots and the abandoned houses, because if we don't, by now, July, the grass would have been 6 foot high or even higher. It wouldn't, it would pretty much hide the houses. That's how bad the weeds and grass get out of control. But we go down the entire block and cut everything just so that our houses in our block look good, because no one else is going to do it for us. If you just drive around Detroit, you'll see pretty much every vacant lot where they tore houses down has grass standing 5, 6 feet tall now. They don't cut it. They don't care. They only tore down houses to make sure they were fulfilling Proposal N, which was another scam. They tricked the residents into voting for Proposal N, which takes all the residents' tax money to be used to clean up the blight. But they're going as cheap as possible and pocketing the majority of that tax money. They're using the cheapest companies and getting the lowest bids. And then in the paperwork, they're putting down way more than it costs. And where's that extra money going? It's going in Duggan's pocket, and it's going in everyone in city council's pocket. I mean, they got caught once 5, 6 years ago when they were skimming money off of the demolitions. I don't know how this guy keeps getting voted back into office. He's a crook, only looking out for himself and his friends. He does nothing for the residents of the city. I'm willing to say he's worse than Kwame was, honestly. At least Kwame cared about the residents. Duggan pretends to care, but does nothing. My block, I'll tell it's Whitney Street off Dexter, has looked the same for the 6 years I've had it. The city hasn't done a thing, yet their land bank channel on YouTube and Facebook would have you thinking they're out there every day making a difference, which is complete lies. If you drive around my neighborhood in the Dexter Linwood area, they haven't touched that area in 6 years. I'm going to start making before and after videos so I have better proof. But I've been filming now for 4 years, so I got videos from 4 years ago of areas that I just videoed recently, and I'm gonna edit it to where it shows the area in 2020 and then shows the area present day, and you'll see that it looks worse. There's no changes. They're not doing anything for those areas. They got people fooled. Sorry for ranting. Marker, you're fine. You can use my videos anytime. Absolutely, Alexander. That's why they're tearing them down left and right, so there's no evidence. They're tearing down these historic school buildings that were built in the early 1900s that have architecture you don't see today, and they're just ripping them down. It's disgusting. I literally see abandoned schools constantly throughout my drives in the city. I don't even see where the hell the functioning schools are. I only see abandoned schools. Like, they closed all the schools to save money. So where are the schools that are open and students are going to? Because I sure don't see many besides like Cas Tech, King, Cody, and a few others. I just don't get it. There used to be like 15 high schools in the city. Now there's like 4 original and a bunch of weird, like Detroit Science and Arts or Detroit Technical this, Detroit. Why? Why? What was wrong with Mackenzie? What was wrong with what are some of the other ones? What was wrong with Southwestern? What was wrong with Crockett? What was wrong with I think Denby's still open, but what was wrong with Kettering? What was wrong with Pershing? What was wrong with else? I know I'm missing a few. Um, Wherever Jerome Bettis went, that one's closed too. Oh, Detroit. I know Osborne's still open on the east side. I don't know if Detroit Central's open. I don't think Northwestern's open. I don't think. I think Henry Ford might be open, but I know Kettering's closed. I'm pretty sure Pershing's closed. I'm pretty sure Denby's closed. Mackenzie's closed. Um, Wherever Tractor Trailer went, I'm pretty sure that school's closed. Chatsy's closed. There's more. Oh, Southeastern used to have 3,000 students. Now they have 259. So what happened there? Mumford? Is Mumford open still? I haven't heard about Mumford in a long time. I know Crockett got closed. Oh, Detroit. Detroit Redford got closed. They had a basketball dynasty going in the early 90s. Detroit. I can't think of the rest right now, but there's a few I'm forgetting that are closed down that were open, but why did they close all those high schools down? The PSL used to be super competitive in football and basketball. Now half the schools are gone. I remember Southwestern was a great school. They had a great basketball run in the 90s. Why'd they tear down Southwestern? Western's in good shape, but that's because it's over by Clark Park and they put a lot of money into that area. I wish Cooley, thank you. Yep, Cooley's another one that got closed. I know there's a few I'm forgetting. Whatever, I know the one that Tractor Trailer went to is closed, and the one Jerome Bettis went to is closed. There's a couple I'm forgetting, but Cooley was one of them. Yeah, Cooley was a historical building that they hurried up and tore down for no reason. If someone can Google Detroit PSL schools that are closed real quick for me, I would appreciate it because it's on the tip of my tongue and bothering me. I know I'm forgetting. Oh, Murray Wright, Detroit Murray Wright. That was another one they closed down. I think Murray Wright was where Tractor Trailer went. Pretty much, it's just Tech and King. all the athletes go to King or Cas Tech, they blow out all the other Detroit schools. But yeah, I don't know how Southeastern went from like 3,000 students down to 250. But all the Detroit high schools used to have like 3,000 students back in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. Does anyone know if it's Pershing or Denby that's closed? I know one of the two are closed. Detroit Henry Ford is open, I believe. Detroit Northwestern, Detroit Central. I don't know about those ones. We know Mackenzie and Kennering are closed. They used to have a lot of good high schools in Detroit. Cody's open. They got the worst football field ever. They don't even have bleachers. I almost want to look into how much it'll cost and donate bleachers to the Cody football field. I mean, why wouldn't the city provide bleachers? They don't want the kids running the streets, so they're playing football. Yet you have them play on a field that has no bleachers. It's crazy to me. The Cody football field's a dump, and they got a decent program. They've had some good teams over the years. Actually, the former coach from Cody is the coach of Belleville now, which is the number one team in the state. I'm not sure which ones got torn down. I know Cooley got torn down. I'm sure Mackenzie's been torn down. Murray Wright's been torn down. I don't know about Northwestern or Central if they're even open. Southwestern got torn down. Chatsey got torn down. Detroit Redford got torn down. Yeah, there's no bleachers. It's wild. I was there for boys and girls club football. I was helping out my buddy's team, and I couldn't believe the high school played their home games there. I just thought it was a practice field, and when someone told me no, that's where they play their games, it really bothered me. Like, parents got to bring chairs to watch their kids play sports. That's a heck of a way to keep kids interested in sports and out of the streets. The city is pathetic. They just tore down the Phoenix Academy in southwest Detroit that was between Lawndale and Springwells. It was a K through 8 school that was there for years and years. A mysterious fire broke down, so they had to do an emergency teardown. Go figure. Wyoming and Tireman. Okay, I know where that is. I'm more familiar with Tireman from Livernois to the Boulevard, but I definitely know right where that's at. In one of my videos, I go by Southeastern High School. It's giant and in great shape. That's why I wonder why they cut it down to only 250 some students. I know they bus a lot of Detroit students to River Rouge High School, Harper Woods High School, Detroit East Village, which was East Detroit's old high school. They go to Ecorse High School. A lot of them go to Redford Thurston and Redford Union, those that live in the northwest part of the city. But River Rouge definitely benefited from a lot of the high schools closing because they're a powerhouse in football now. Basically, if you're from Detroit and you're real good at football, like I said, you go to Tech, Detroit King, or River Rouge. I know Highland Park High School got torn down some years ago. When I was in high school, we played them in football and wrestling when the high school was still up. I remember their football field was behind the school in the middle of a neighborhood. Behind each bleachers there was like a little alley and then the backs of houses. It was in a rough area, but they had good sporting programs in Highland Park. I don't know where they send their students now. It's sad knowing they tear all these schools down. Detroit Crockett used to be a good football school and a real good school for students, but that didn't last very long. Yeah, it's still called Cody something, but they upgraded the outside of the building a little bit. But there's a lot of prep schools in Detroit, like a ton. That's what I was saying, like Detroit Science and Math, Detroit Prep Auxiliary, Detroit this, like, because my old high school was playing a lot of the newer Detroit prep schools because they were the same size of students. But yeah, there's a ton of prep schools in Detroit now. I wish I could click off this and Google the schools in Detroit, but I don't want to lose everyone. It's crazy that Osborne is surviving, which happens to be in the roughest neighborhood in the entire city. And that school's still going strong, right in the center of the red zone. I don't know. I think prep schools are not ran by the city, so I think they're able to acquire better funding. That's why I think a lot of the schools shut down and prep schools open because they had no money in the Detroit Public School District, and it ranked dead last in the country year in and year out. But prep schools, yeah, they don't got to follow a state or city agenda. They're almost like private schools. I'm pretty sure Detroit Henry Ford is still a good school. I know it's giant. The last time I drove by it, like 2 years ago, it was in pretty good shape. That's a big school over there on the northwest side. Oh, yeah. We forgot about Detroit Renaissance. Detroit Renaissance is still open. I'm not sure what part of the city Detroit Renaissance High School's in, but that high school's always been a decent high school. It's like a Cas Tech. I think you gotta have a certain grade average to get into Renaissance. But yeah, it's wild how fast they're tearing down all these old schools in Detroit. There's got to be some method behind the madness. I'm curious where the Highland Park students go to school since they got rid of the junior high and high school. That's been gone for like 10 years now. Does anyone know if Detroit Northwestern's still open? I'm pretty sure Detroit Central's still open. I think we figured out the closed ones are Murray Wright, Mackenzie, Kettering, Cooley, Denby or Pershing, one of the two, and Southwestern and Chadsey. Oh yeah, and Detroit Redford, and Detroit Crockett. One of the Detroit schools' football uniforms are the same as the Miami Hurricanes. I forget which one it is. I remember when I was coaching football, I had a scout and they were rocking the Miami Hurricane uniforms. Open schools on Google: Northwestern, Central, Tech, Denby, King, U of D, Pershing, Renaissance, Henry Ford, Mumford, and Cody. Okay, thank you. So that means Murray Wright's closed, obviously. Kettering's closed, obviously. Cooley is closed, obviously. Crockett is closed, obviously. Southwestern is closed. Chatsey is closed. Northwestern's still open. Central too. That's good. I'm glad Denby and Pershing are still open. Renaissance, Henry Ford. Okay, so that's not bad, but I know there's at least 8 of them closed. There's a couple we're not thinking of, but that's more than I thought of. That's not counting all the prep schools. Thank you for searching. Out of all those schools, Tech and King and Renaissance are really the only ones that are good at athletics. Wasn't Osborne open? Didn't you see Osborne on the list? I thought Osborne was open. Maybe they closed Osborne down recently. And Southeastern wasn't on there either. I could have sworn Southeastern was open. If you're still in the chat, Google Osborne and Southeastern high schools, please. No, it's okay. Just see if it's just got to be those ones, Southeastern and Osborne. I think we nailed the rest. I know Denby's the Doughboys. Osborne, Southeastern. Hmm. I don't think Philip J. Murray could be Murray Wright, but I appreciate you doing that. I, I don't know Northwestern's mascot. Yeah, there's a lot of arts and prep schools in Detroit now. I don't know Central's mascot. Tech's the Technicians. Denby's the Doughboys. King is I forget. Uh, um Pershing, I forget. Renaissance, I forget. Henry Ford, I forget them all. Mumford, I know Cody's the comments. Mumford might be the Mustangs. Tech's got that brand new school right downtown, pretty much, with that beautiful football field. Looks like a stadium. That's definitely the school that they put the most money into by far. But I don't know. It might. cost tuition? Because I know you got to get accepted to Cas Tech. I'm pretty sure Kettering used to be in the Linwood area. Northwestern and Henry Ford are kind of close. I wonder where all the Southwest students that live on the McGraw side go to school now. Because they used to go to Chatsey. Maybe they all go to Western. I went to Drew Junior High down the street from Mackenzie. Philippines and beyond, are you still in here? Do you know if Mackenzie's still standing or not? All right, what else can we talk about? Anyone got any questions about Detroit neighborhoods or anything? Got that knowledge on lockdown. If you want to know the difference between neighborhoods or west side, east side, southwest, northwest, or gang stuff, old drug crews, old mafia crews. I know a lot of that stuff. From what I hear, I don't believe so. The main gangs I hear of still being active in Southwest, which it's died down big time from the 90s and early 2000s, but allegedly, we'll say there's definitely Latin counts for sure. They probably got the biggest numbers. There are still some folks, GDs, Cobras, and the Serranos hang with the folks. There's Serranos. And there's also not many Latin kings left. I don't think there's much Del Rey Mafia left. Maybe a couple outskirts. There's a newer gang I seen popping up a lot out of California. I think, aren't they called 18th Street? I've been seeing a lot of 18th Street tags. I might have the number wrong. I'm pretty sure it's 18. It's either 13. It ain't 13, so it's pretty sure it's 18th. Yeah, because 18th Street is a Latino gang big in Los Angeles, but I've been seeing a lot of 18th Street tagging through Southwest, mainly on the cemetery side, the folk side, which would be the side west of Livernois. Once you get east of Livernois, you're in Latin Count territory. Some cash flows are still around, but they mainly stick with the counts from what I know and remember. But most of the gangs from the 90s, when there were like 50 gangs in Southwest, like there were tons. There was the Martin Mafia counts, there was the Bayside counts, there was the Toledo Mafia counts, and then you had the Insane Spanish Cobras, 14th Street Folks, you had Worldwide Gangsters, you had X-Men, you had Square Boys, you had Street Boys, you had D Boys, you had Latin Kings, you had um shoot, there was more than that. What else was around back then that was pretty held some way? Of course, cash flow, 2400, 4400. You had, there was a lot of smaller cliques too that didn't last, or they kind of went with other crews eventually. But like the, I know the Street Boys, Square Boys were around for a while for sure, and then the few different sets of counts and flows, and then the few different sets of folks. I don't know what X-Men was. Del Rey Mafia. I don't know if they were folks or folks or family, or what is it? I don't know. The folk nation and the other opposite nation. Think of some of the other ones from the neighborhood back then. You would hear about the Bagley Boys. They were around like in the 80s, early 90s. One of the first ones around for sure. And you had I don't know. That's about all I could think of right now. But there were a few different Cobra sets and a few different, like the 14th Street Folks were originally Cobra set. Then they broke off the Worldwide Gangsters. the main ones in the 90s were, of course, the Counts, the Cash Flows, and the Cobras. But most of those guys are either dead in jail or got jobs and families now. Most of the gangs in Southwest today are younger generations, like 18 to 25-year-olds running around. But all I really ever see is Latin count tags, Serrano tags, some GD folk tags, and then I've been seeing the 18th Street tags lately. No Norteños, which is weird because they're Serranos, but I don't ever see nothing Norteño. I could be wrong, don't quote me. This is just all alleged stuff. Most of the count chefs are all dead, but the Toledo Mafia now, because the Bayside count, they were over in Oakwood Heights, the land that Marathon bought and tore down, all the houses over there that they fixed in Oakwood. What I remember from Southwest in the day, back in the day. It was wild though in the 90s. I was young. I was only like 7 or 8, but I remember seeing those older guys fighting and beefing all the time. There was always drive-bys and arson nonstop. Southwest was a totally different place back then. Hold on, I'm here. I'm turning the light on. Hey, baby. Ain't no mountain high. Ain't no valley. Ain't no river wide. Ooh, where the fuck my hat go, bruh? What? Ugh. Oh well. Disappeared. Doesn't Detroit get a rap? Detroit doesn't get the rap. Well, true, but I mean, if you look at the most dangerous city lists, like if you type in random years 2019, 2021, in pretty much every source, there will be like 15 different sources. They still have Detroit number one more often than the other cities. But the main four cities that are one, two, three, and four just juggled around based on year and source. It's always St. Louis, Detroit, Memphis, and Baltimore. They're always the top four no matter what. But Detroit today is nothing compared to what it was from the 70s through the mid 2000s. It's definitely a lot calmer. I mean, in the 80s, Detroit was having between 600 and 700 homicides a year, which was basically the same amount as Chicago. In LA, in those cities, had a lot more people. So that's why Detroit was the murder capital in the 80s, because I mean, it was crazy throughout the 90s. And then it's still, I mean, let's see. Last year was the best year for homicide numbers since the 60s. They had 223, which was still like the fifth highest in the country, but that was the lowest Detroit's recorded in years. And then but if you look like on all the lists and stuff, they go by violent crime per 100,000 people, and Detroit still be always on the top of the lists for the highest violent crime rate, even though it's not as rowdy as it used to be. So it's still definitely a place you got to be careful. But if you mind your own business, you don't go sticking your nose where it don't belong. You definitely don't go to party stores, gas stations after dark. You're going to be all right. I mean, I've been around the city 41 years as a white man. I've never had a violent encounter or any dangerous situation, but that's because I've never went looking for it. I've never stuck my nose where it didn't belong. Most of the violence in Detroit is between people who know each other. It's rivals and oppositions, like fighting and retaliating. That's where most of like the homicides and major, you still have carjackings is a high crime in Detroit, car theft, robbery, that's all. But like homicide wise, it's mostly between people that know each other, drug related stuff. Like if you came and visited Detroit and toured the city, driving around, minding your own business, you're going to be fine. The chances of getting caught up in something bad or dangerous is very low. That's because Detroit's not a big gang city. But Chicago, on the other hand, I wouldn't be driving around all the neighborhoods because they're all gang affiliated and each neighborhood is a different gang turf. So if you happen to have the wrong colors on, you might become a target. You know what I'm saying? And then St. Louis is it's so small now. I mean, they barely have 300,000 people, and they really only get between like 120 and 150 homicides a year. But it's definitely the only city that's been number one as much or more than Detroit in the last 20 years, I'd say. I mean, the statistics don't lie. You can go to Yahoo, FBI, any kind of source, just Google it, and almost every time it always will say Detroit's the most dangerous city in the country. But like I said, if you don't go looking for trouble, you're going to be just fine. I can't speak for Baltimore and Memphis and St. Louis. I think those cities are more dangerous because they're a lot more dense, where as you're going to be driving around the streets compacted and around people, while Detroit's spread out and huge, and a lot of the neighborhoods are abandoned to where you might have to drive a few miles into a different area. You won't even see another person because the neighborhood is so vacant and run down. That's another thing. Like Detroit is built different than most big cities. Detroit is more sprawled out. Like after downtown, it sprawls into neighborhoods more than any other city. Most other cities are compact, and like Philly, Baltimore, when you're in their city, you're in compact, dense, like city shit. But Detroit's neighborhoods are more like suburban neighborhoods where it's like houses in blocks in neighborhood. It's it's hard to explain. You're not down by like buildings and alleys and industrial warehouses. Detroit has that, but the bad parts of Detroit are actually like neighborhoods where you have blocks and blocks of houses and streets going in all different directions. So it's almost like you're in a suburb, but it's Detroit. It's super sprawled out and not that dense. So, like driving around the row houses in Philly and Baltimore, you're going to be in the action more than driving around Detroit, because Detroit's set up almost like the metro areas of other cities. Like once you leave Detroit and drive into the suburbs, it's designed the same exact way. It's just houses next to each other like neighborhoods. It's not like inner city stuff. Detroit's inner city density is actually where it's safe, but the sprawled neighborhoods, the further you get from downtown, is where it's dangerous. Whereas most cities, it's dangerous when you're in the actual city where there's the buildings and warehouses and alleys. And then when you leave that area and go to the surrounding neighborhoods, it's safer, which that's opposite for Detroit. I mean, Detroit's huge. You can fit Boston, San Francisco, and Manhattan inside Detroit's city limits. Going from like the southwest corner to the northeast corner takes about 50 minutes. And it's all like suburban driving. You're in like suburban neighborhoods. You're not in like urban, dense city. That's the difference. That's why people say Detroit don't seem dangerous, because visitors are only in the downtown area. They don't go out driving through different neighborhoods where all the stuff goes down. But if you're in Baltimore visiting and you go get dinner and make a wrong turn, you're going to be down some side street next to an alley in between a bunch of warehouses with drug gangs standing on the corner, and you'll be fearing for your life. That's why that Charlie Bow guy that makes all the videos always talks about how like Philadelphia is the most dangerous hood, because Philadelphia is so dense. Like the actual city part of Philly, the row homes and everything are all tied into town in the city. It's not sprawled out like the Detroit area. I don't know. I tried to explain. It's hard to explain. It's just Detroit's different from the other cities. It was built that way on purpose because they were trying to get as many houses built in the area as they could for all the people coming to work the auto factories back in the day. So they didn't want a dense area. They wanted it to be sprawled out and spacious with as many houses as possible, because there were so many people coming from the south to work the auto factories. So like Metro Detroit is like one giant suburb that connects to Detroit, which looks just like the suburbs, except you can tell you're in Detroit because it's super run down suburbs in Detroit. And then when you get to the downtown area, it's just so small that not a lot of crime and action's going on in that part of Detroit. All the action goes on in the neighborhoods. So like, again, like the metro Memphis area, like downtown Memphis, and you're in the suburbs where it's safe and stuff. If that was Detroit, that would be the spots that are dangerous. You get what I'm saying? And basically, the second you cross out of Detroit into other cities around Detroit, it immediately becomes safe that quick. That's how segregated the Metro Detroit area is. Like once you cross 8 Mile, you immediately are in a way safer area and have way less of a chance of becoming a victim of a crime. The same as once you cross the western boundary into the suburbs or the eastern boundary. It's like that. You be going like Dearborn, perfect example. Dearborn in Detroit. Dearborn is a beautiful city, one of the nicer cities in the country, and it literally borders Detroit on the whole southwest side. Once you cross over from Dearborn into Detroit by crossing one street, you literally are in a whole different world. The streets look dirtier. The houses are in a lot rough shape. You start seeing trash everywhere. You start seeing a lot of people roaming the streets, but it still looks like a suburb. So that's the best way to break it down. Now, in the 70s and 80s, there was a place called the Cas Corridor, which was in downtown Detroit, and that was a real dangerous area. But now that area is completely gentrified and one of the safest parts of the city. That's where they built Little Caesars Arena and bars everywhere. It's downtown Detroit's one of the safest downtowns in the country, I would say, which is crazy for being one of the most dangerous cities, but having one of the safest downtowns. In the summer, on weekend nights, pretty much the entire streets of downtown are flooded with white people from the suburbs walking around, going to the bars and restaurants and casinos. But they know to stay downtown. If you accidentally miss your exit on the freeway and have to drive a mile or two into the neighborhoods, then that's when it could get bad. But if you stay downtown, you're going to be completely safe. Plus, the majority of the police are always stationed downtown because the mayor wants to protect all the suburbanites and could care less about the citizens, which I think is bullshit. There's a million cops downtown, so the city is a free crime reign every weekend because you know all the cops are going to be downtown. So by the time you do something in the neighborhoods, it'll be an hour or so before the cops even get there. But Detroit's more of a neighborhood crew hustling city. Like blocks and hoods stick together. It's not like run by gangs or anything. Like if you're on Plymouth Road, there's a crew of people that grew up in the Plymouth Road hood that run that area. And then if you're on 7 Mile, there's a crew of people that grew up in that area that run that part of the city. It's basically broken up by cliques and hoods, but most hoods get along. The east and west side used to beef for years, but when the rappers started getting big in Detroit in the last 10 years, they brought the east and west together. So now they get along because a lot of the rappers are from both sides of the city and they rap with each other instead of beefing, preventing them from getting money. But like I said, somehow Detroit still finds itself in the top 4 most dangerous cities every year, going back to the 70s, no matter what. So the statistics don't lie. There's definitely crime that happens, but as far as outsiders, you're safer in Detroit than you would be in St. Louis, Baltimore, and Memphis, in my opinion. It might be more scary to if you're in one of the rundown abandoned neighborhoods after dark because they don't have street lights and it's pitch black and you can't see anything except abandoned houses that you're right up close to if you're walking, or if you're in a car you'll see all kinds of abandoned buildings, burnt down buildings. You won't see many people, but you'll feel like you're in a ghost town that was hit by a nuke, which is creepy in itself. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. But I think we're on pace this year to crush last year's homicide numbers because every night there be 4 to 5 shootings and deaths going on this summer, it seems. I think they're already at like 182 homicides, and it's only July, so we still got all of July, August, September, October, November. We still got 6 months and we're at 182. So we're on pace for over 300 homicides this year, which is a shame. Just when they had their best year. But Chicago, on the other hand, in the 90s and early 2000s, it was actually a lot safer than it is nowadays. They were having their lowest homicide years during that time. 90s, early 2000s, Chicago was having between like 300 and 600 homicides a year. And now it seems like the last 10 years, I don't know what the hell happened, but Chicago turned into a absolute crazy place where they be getting over 800 homicides a year now, which still is wild because there's so much people there that on the most dangerous city list, Chicago never even cracks the top 20. And people are always like, these lists are junk. Where's Chicago at? Blah, blah, blah. Well, you got to think when you got 3 million people and only 6 or 700 of them are dying a year, your deaths per 100,000 people are going to be way lower than the smaller cities like Detroit, St. Louis, and Baltimore. Baltimore has the most murders other than Chicago when it comes to in Philadelphia, but Philly is another one of those cities that's got a couple million people, so 500 murders in Philly with over 2.7 million people, you're only going to average like 30 murders per 100,000 people, and you're not going to crack the top 20. But Baltimore be having like almost 400 murders a year for a city with only 500,000 people. That's crazy. Memphis be getting up there. I don't know if you guys, I made a video. It's the last video on my video section. I compared every city that's rough to Detroit for the 2024 violent crime number. Detroit was at 94.5 per 100,000 people, and only 3 cities came in higher. And I was surprised, like Philly, Chicago, Cleveland, even Memphis, Baltimore, St. Louis, they were not even close. They were all in the 80s. The 3 cities that had a higher crime rating than Detroit in 2024 was Camden, had 95.3 for number 3. Number 2 was Benton Harbor, Michigan, which you don't really hear much about, had 96.3. Benton Harbor, Michigan, I've never been there. I don't really ever read much about it, but Benton Harbor has the highest crime rating in the state of Michigan and the second highest in the country. And the highest in the country, before I tell you, if anyone wants to guess what city they think had the highest crime rate in the country currently in 2024, go ahead and put in your guess. I bet you'll never guess what city it was. Like I said, it was Detroit number 4, Camden number 3, Benton Harbor number 2, and number 1 out of all the dangerous cities in the country. Who do you think it was? Just type in a random guess. I don't think anyone's gonna get it. It came in at 96.8, just a little higher than Benton Harbor. No one wants to guess? I'll wait 30 more seconds. I typed in every city. I typed in Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Philly, Rockford, Chicago, Oakland, Stockton, St. Louis, Atlanta, Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Birmingham, Miami, Jacksonville, Newark, Patterson, Gary, Indiana, Indianapolis, and none of them were higher. There's only one that was higher. East St. Louis had the highest crime rating in the country for 2024 at 96.8. East St. Louis is no joke. East St. Louis is real small, but it's a lot worse than St. Louis. East St. Louis is the most dangerous place in the country by far. But I was surprised about Benton Harbor. I always heard of Benton Harbor being bad, but I never knew it was that bad to where it was the second worst in the country. East Cleveland, I thought was going to be up there, but surprisingly, it wasn't up there. Camden surprised me because I've heard Camden has cleaned up a lot over the years and ain't as bad as it used to be. I'm going to read some comments. I've been slacking. Exactly, Alexander. They wanted single houses with driveways and garages. That's exactly why Detroit's designed the way it is. But if you Google 2024 highest crime rate city, it's going to be East St. Louis, barely edging out Benton Harbor, which barely edges out Camden, which barely edges out Detroit. For Detroit being such a big city, I can't believe how high its number was. Most of the other big cities that are bad, like Baltimore, Memphis, St. Louis, they were only in the 80s. Flint was like 91. Saginaw was in the 80s. Muskegon Heights was in the 90s. Michigan's got a lot of bad cities. I don't remember what year it was. One of the years, though, on one of the lists, Michigan had 7 of the top 20 most dangerous cities, which is pitiful if you're a Michigander. It was Detroit, Flint, Saginaw, Muskegon Heights, Lansing, Benton Harbor, Inkster, and Pontiac, I believe. Flint's actually got worse blight than Detroit nowadays, since Detroit's torn down over 100,000 structures in the last 10 years. Before 2013, Detroit had the most abandoned structures in the country by far. No city was even close. I think the next closest city was Gary, Indiana, and Gary's small. But now Detroit has gutted out 100,000 structures, and they plan on gutting out all the remaining blight by 2027. We'll see if it happens, because there's still a ton of blight and abandoned houses throughout the city, but they put a big dent in it, which I think the vacant lots look just as bad as it did when the houses were there. I mean, there's parts of Detroit where you can drive down a street for 6 blocks and see nothing but empty fields where houses once stood. Kind of sad. Anyone ever been to Benton Harbor? Four people, what's up? We're just talking about Detroit pretty much in general and other bad cities across the country and comparing them. Whatnot. Any other questions? I'm answering them. If I could find my freaking hat. Where the hell did it go? How did my hat just disappear? That's so annoying. I'll be right back. There it is. Jeez. So stupid. There we go. Now you can see me a little better. It's a little dark in here. Oh, see if we can get lights, camera, action. Whoa, that was a little too bright. There we go. There's my ugly self. That's too bright though. Let me see if the Christmas lights make a difference. Come on, dog. There we go. That looks all right. What can we do? What's this do? Where'd it go? Where'd the chat go? There we go. No, Michigan. It's like number 5 most dangerous state. I looked not too long ago. You would think it would be one of them, but I think the most dangerous state was Alabama and then Louisiana. Because Alabama's got a lot of like smaller little cities that are real bad. Same with Louisiana. But Michigan's like the 5th worst state. Oh, what was New Jersey was one of the worst states too. You got Jersey City, you got Camden, you got Patterson, you got Newark, you got a good amount there. You would think Ohio, but it wasn't even in the top 10 because they got Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, Youngstown, Canton, Cincinnati. But that's why they call it the Murder Mitten. I remember one poll, I think it was like 2018 or something. Detroit was number 1, Flint was number 2, Saginaw was like number 7, and Lansing or something was like number 13. I was like, what the fuck? I haven't been to Flint many times. I need to get up there and get some footage. Benton Harbor as well. Muskegon Heights as well. They say Grand Rapids got some hood, but is always in the top best places to live with. So I'm not buying it. Even though everyone from Grand Rapids calls it Gun Rouge. I've only been to Grand Rapids twice for concerts, but I know Muskegon is bad. Muskegon Heights is real bad. Kalamazoo is pretty bad. Saginaw is real bad. Flint's real bad. Pontiac pretty bad. Inkster's pretty bad. Then, of course, that's harder. I was surprised how high of the Lansing was. I didn't know Lansing was this apparently Lansing's real. Nothing but lakes, forest, and peace and quiet. There's 10 million people in Michigan, and there's only 2 million people that live north of Flint. So 8 million people live in the bottom portion of the state, because Flint is not even halfway up the state. It's only like a quarter of the way up. The halfway point, I would say, would be like at the thumb, which Flint is well south of the thumb. And then, of course, the UP is the closest thing to Alaska in the country. They say the UP is one of the last, what do they call that, last frontiers. Only like 60% of the UP's ever been explored because it's so thick with forest land. Ohio got shafted with that one when we had the Michigan versus Ohio battle for Toledo, and they got Toledo and we got the UP. We definitely got the better end of that bargain because Toledo's a dump and the UP is a huge tourist destination. With all that shoreline of Lake Superior, it's majestic up there. A lot of people don't realize you can drive from the furthest point of the Upper Peninsula all the way down to Detroit, and it's almost the same distance of going from Detroit to the Florida border, which is wild. I don't know if it's the eastern point or the western point of the UP, but from the furthest point of the UP to Detroit is like a 12-hour drive. And if you drive south 12 hours from Detroit, you're basically almost to the Florida Georgia line. Wisconsin got shafted, and I don't know how they didn't get the UP. It directly connects to their state, but I'm not complaining. Even though most people in the UP claim Wisconsin anyway. Traitors. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that fact not too long ago, and it surprised me that you literally can stay in Michigan and drive almost the same distance as going to Florida. But I mean, one of the I wish I can't. I think it's the eastern side of the UP, like the top of the bunny ear, from that point up there down. But then again, the far west border is you got to drive across the whole UP to get to the Mackinac, which is probably a good 6 hour drive, and then another 6 hour drive from the Mackinac to Detroit. I need to visit Marquette one day. Marquette's the biggest city in the UP with almost 50,000 people. That's where Northern Michigan University is, or Michigan Tech, I believe. Oh, you're guessing? Yeah. It was East St. Louis. East Cleveland wasn't as high as I thought it would have been. Same with Little Rock. It was East St. Louis was the highest crime rate of 2024 per 1,000 people, followed by Benton Harbor, Michigan, Camden, New Jersey, and then Detroit, Michigan. East St. Louis, it's no joke. I mean, it's real small from what I've seen in videos, but it looks bad. East Cleveland, though, East Cleveland's real bad too. East Cleveland's pretty much the closest thing I've seen as far as the worst blight and abandonment compared to Detroit when Detroit was in its prime of blight before the teardowns. Gary, Indiana as well, but you got to think you can fit like 15 Gary, Indianas inside Detroit, and you could probably fit like 70 East Clevelands in Detroit. So, for as bad as those two areas are, imagine 50 of them next to each other, and then that's Detroit. Well, it was. they've definitely made a dent in the blight in the last 10 years with the demolitions. Over 100,000 since 2013 they've torn down. That's a lot of vacant housing. If you ever want to look up the best blight videos of Detroit, try to find videos of the east side prior to 2013, right before they started tearing down blocks and blocks of houses. It was the absolute worst thing you would ever see. A complete war zone, looked like a nuclear bomb site. I, there's a few videos on there of pre 2013. Charlie Bow, who's the best Detroit content guy on YouTube by far, his first video start in 2015, which still show you a good portion of what the east side looked like before they started tearing it all down. Does anyone need a boat? Every time I go videoing in Detroit, I come across boats everywhere in the weirdest places, dumped in the middle of fields, dumped on side of roads, dumped in alleys, dumped in front lawns of abandoned houses. There's so many abandoned boats throughout Detroit. It's wild. But seeing Michigan has the most registered boats in the country, and boats are hard to maintain and break down a lot. People probably get sick of them and figure I'm going to dump this in Detroit when it gets dark out, which I can't stand people who dump in the city. The majority of the dumpers are from the suburbs. That's interesting. So far, 56% think Detroit's coming back versus 43% think it's not. They must not have been in here when I gave my whole reasoning for why the city's not coming back. It's just all a big ol' scam. Those of you that voted yes for Detroit coming back, comment why or the reason for your vote. What is it that makes you think or see Detroit coming back? I'm just curious to see. I had no clue about that. Makes sense. I never got into stripping and collecting metals and scrapyard stuff. I've never been down that bad to where I needed money to have to scrap metal, which I'm not hating on people, but now I kind of understand. So they take out all the valuable stuff and just pretty much leave the shell of the boat. Another thing I see constantly throughout the city are mattresses out in front of house. I came up with a theory just being silly. I at one point I was seeing so many mattresses that I thought that maybe it was a method to where they were hiding drugs in these mattresses that looked like they were dumped in the trash, and a guy was coming by and picking up the score out of the mattress, and no one would suspect a thing, even though I know that's not what's happening. But literally, there's mattresses just everywhere, nonstop. You can count mattress, 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 mattress. It would be smart though, like to cut out a big part of the mattress and stuff the drugs in there, and then the guy picking it up would just grab it out of the mattress and no one would think twice because it looks like the mattress was just dumped as trash. A major drug trade going across the city of Detroit through mattresses was just discovered. A whole operation shut down. Millions of dollars passed through the city via mattresses. LOL. It's yeah, I mean, I was just saying that to my boy. I'm like, dude, there's so many mattresses in every neighborhood. Like, what if they're really like using them to freaking pass drugs along without hand to hand contact and whatnot? But like I said, it's a far cry, but I like to think of deep things like that because it was more than just people throwing out a mattress. I mean, no way in hell that many people were getting rid of their mattresses. It was literally every part of the city, every block I was on, there would be six, seven, eight mattresses on a street, and it was wild. Watch, I expose some big thing. Now I'm freaking wanted on the streets by the biggest drug lords. That would be my luck. And they weren't even in bad shape. I was thinking maybe bed bugs or the house, like the tenant got booted and the mattress got left over and they just threw it up. But I mean, there was just too many of them for that. There was like something was going on. There's no way that many mattresses were just out in front of houses. Like, the odds of that was just, yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, you see a handful here and there, but to see that many in all different neighborhoods on different days, different weeks, different months, constantly. Like, go back and watch some of my videos when you got spare time. Just like scan through them and you'll see the mattresses because I always call them out. I'm like, there's another one, there's another one, there's another one. It's wild. Dang, I didn't know that there was that much money in boats, spare boats. There's definitely meth heads in Detroit now. It took a while to get here, but it's here. Detroit was always a crack and H city, but the the crystals made its way. Where are you from, Alexander, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, you don't got to tell me the direct city, but like a location. Are you a Michigander? If so, do you live in Metro Detroit? What else is there to talk about? There ain't many people in here anymore. They keep coming and going because I don't talk about drama, so I'm not entertaining. LOL. Anyone in here play poker? I'm at the casinos downtown playing poker all the time. Oh, okay. Right on. You like five card? Like the casino game five card or 5 card stud, like with friends. Like the table game 5 card at the casino. That's a good game. Right on. How long have you been subscribed to my channel? Just curious. I need to do lives more often and meet people that support my channel. I appreciate you all. We're dying down. I think I'm going to end it. Thanks for. How long have you been a subscriber to my channel, Alex, if you're still in here? It was a pleasure meeting you, man. Thank you for the support. I'm going to end this in a minute. It's dying down. But I appreciate you staying in here and conversating with me, man. Oh, as soon as I say that, 4 people pop in. What's up, peoples? Where are you from? You Detroiters? What do y'all want to talk about? Anything Detroit?